Hello, happy Wednesday, everybody. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. It's been a hectic day, but in the best, most beautiful kind of way. So, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Lindsey Hall. I'm an intimacy and empowerment coach, and what that means to me is that I love to help women, but people in general, deepen an intimacy with themselves and with other people, and really own their power and their pleasure and basically just live a life that you absolutely fucking love. Like, that is the point of all of this. If you don't absolutely love your life, then, like, what's the point? Come on. So that's where I got to in my journey, at least. And so I love supporting other women and other people to do the same. So, as part of this beautiful work that I am so privileged to get to do, I do these weekly tea break chats where I come on and I talk about life, what's going on in my life in the last week or so, what's come up, what lessons I've been learning, all the things, and then I answer your questions that you guys have sent me. And I usually have a drink of some sort. Today it is an iced coffee. It's not actually all that warm out, but I had it in the fridge from when it was warm earlier in the week, so here we go. Cheers. And goodness, because it's been such a hectic day, I have not really put any thought into where I was going to start with what's been going on this week. Although, let's be honest, that's pretty much the same every week. The whole point of it is that it is the kind of off the cuff what's been going on chat. It's a chat. So, the thing is, though, a lot of what's been going on is the dating after divorce conversations, which I know I talked about last week, but I've still been doing them because they've still been amazing. So I only intended to do these dating after divorce calls for a week. My idea was I was going to push it for a week, get as many calls in as I could, get as many stories as I could, and then start redesigning my dating after divorce program. And what has actually ended up happening is that I just can't stop. This is just so much fun. I want to keep going. I've been having so many conversations. Come to think of it, it's a lot like me living in England. When I graduated from university and moved over here to be with my now ex-husband, who is English, the idea was to move over to England for 2 to 3 years, and then together we would both move back to the States. And then I just kept staying and staying and staying. And now it's been more than 12 years. In fact, coming up on 13. So let's see if I'm still doing these dating after divorce calls 13 years from now. But it's cool because when something feels good and right and exciting and you're enjoying it, go with it. Absolutely go with it. It's what's kept me in England, and it's what's keeping me doing these calls. It's also my approach to most things. It's my approach to everybody I date. It's my approach to what I'm doing in my business. If things feel good and exciting and right for you, go with them. So that being said, yes, I am now more than 2 weeks in to my dating after divorce calls. I am absolutely freaking loving it. I have had, hello, lovely. I've had now, what am I at? 24, 25-ish of these calls. And I was like, all right, I'll do them through this week and I'll stop. I've already got availability opened up for next week and people asking me if we can book in more. So as long as people are willing to come to me and talk to me about these stories, I'm going to keep doing them because they're amazing. I am having so much fun hearing your stories, hearing from people, getting on, I also just want to take a moment. Can we just take a moment here to recognize that, my job is really kind of weird and also super fucking awesome. But I recognize it's weird because, this morning, I had 2 calls with complete strangers. So a lot of these calls I've had have been people who I know through Instagram, people, who are watching this, or people who have connected us. So they're not necessarily people that I, am close friends with. In fact, most of them have not been people I know I'm close friends with. So they've been, internet friends as such. But this morning, like I said, I've had 2 who are complete strangers. I put up a post on LinkedIn yesterday and these 2 people clicked it, booked it. I've never spoken to them, didn't know where they came from. And yet within a minute of being on the call, they're telling me about their divorce. They're telling me about their relationships. They're telling me about their dating stuff. They're telling me about their kids. And so I guess I just want to take a moment to recognize, I know this is weird. I know that this is not quite how, quote unquote, real life works. But also this is real life. And it's been so, so cool to have everybody, all of these people come on and trust me with their stories and open up and share this. And like one of the men this morning was like, after I clicked on that link, like I saw your post come up and I clicked on it, and then afterwards I was like, oh, why did I agree to do this? And then after our call at the end when we were finishing, he said like, this is, is that what you wanted? I've never really done this before. And I was like, oh, you mean you don't usually like come on and tell complete strangers on the internet all about your personal romantic life? And he's like, yeah, no, I don't usually. But a huge thank you for doing it. So I think this is me just riffing on like how amazing it is. This is my job. A big thank you to everybody who's done it. A plug to like go with what feels good and right and awesome in your life and not overthink it, not over question it. Just keep going with it. The fact that if you are listening to this and you want to come on and chat to me and you haven't booked it yet, I still got availability. I'm still keeping it open. The link to book a call is in my bio. And if I haven't expanded the dates far enough yet and you're like, ooh, none of those dates work for me, but I want to chat to you, send me a message. So far, I just keep saying yes. I just keep adding more dates to it. At some point, I might stop that. But for now, I'm just having so much fun. And equally, if you're listening to this and it's not you who is divorced or have stories about dating, but you know people who do, please still send them my way, especially men. I'm getting more men in. So today of my 4 calls, 3 of them have been men today, and it's super, super helpful. I should explain why I wanted to talk to men, because I haven't done that yet on here, I don't think. But it's because I am getting a lot of, there's still this perception that like men and women are from different planets, basically, or that men and women are 2 different species, and that men don't go through the same stuff that women go through, or that they have completely different feelings, or more specifically, they don't have feelings. And I'm calling bullshit on that right here, right now. I'm calling utter bullshit on that. Men have feelings too. They often, so this is where like I could rant about the patriarchy. The patriarchy fucks us all over. Sorry, I'm very sweary today all of a sudden. But the patriarchy fucks us all over. And one of the biggest ways is by not allowing men to feel their feelings. So men have often been brought up in a way to like keep those feelings like closed down, don't feel them, don't discuss them, don't process them, like keep them contained. But despite the fact that that's what the patriarchy does, it doesn't actually stop men from having the feelings. It just stops them from experiencing them fully and processing them and talking about them. But they still have the same feelings. And so a big piece of this work that I want to be doing, and that like the reason I'm wanting to have these conversations with men and the reasons like where this is going to go, is I just think it's so important to smash the fucking patriarchy for one thing, but because men, I'm really just trying to prove the point, which is what I'm doing so far, that men have these feelings, and trying to make it more okay for them to come out, for men to feel their feelings, to express them. And I want to do this for both men and women, in that I want the men to know that this is okay, and I want women to know that it's okay for men to do this. And so the more men that I'm talking to, the more it is absolutely proving my point that, they do have these feelings, and they often get expressed differently. There's different language that gets used. They process it in different ways, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. So when I am doing this work then, and when I'm doing my coaching work, at the moment, all of my coaching has been aimed towards women. And there is a very strong chance that that I will start coaching men. If you're a man listening to this and you want to work with me, I absolutely get in touch. Like, I'm really open to the idea of working with men. But also, this is really helpful in my coaching with women too, because really we all need to relate to each other differently. Like, this isn't about just that men need to start feeling and expressing their feelings. That can't happen in isolation. There's also the piece of women need to understand and have different expectations of men. And it's not just saying, men, you should cry more, because it's not just that actually either. And it's, we all have, again, these conditioned ideas of like how men and women should act or what we think we want or don't want. And really what we're all working on here is different ways of relating to each other. And so although like women might be like, oh, so some women don't want men to show emotions at all because that's what the patriarchy has told us and our social conditioning has told us. Men don't cry, toughen up, be a man, don't shed a tear. Other women are like, no, I want my man to cry. Like, I want a sensitive man. I want to see his feelings. I want them on display. And actually, we don't necessarily want men who cry all the time and like because we want the men to have this sense of safety for us and security and structure. And if there's too many tears, that can be problematic. And so we end up with all of these like conflicting ideas, both like all of us. And here I am saying men and women, but I also want to bring in, the non-binary gender identities as well. And because, good Lord, if we have this many like hard expectations for the men and the women, like non-binary, oh my goodness, like who knows what feelings you're supposed to be feeling. So the point of all of this is really to be opening up the conversation to all of us relating differently to each other and all of us getting to show up in our wholeness and getting to show up in our whole being rather than just these external shells of who the patriarchy has said we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to show up. My whole point of doing all of this damn coaching work is to really allow us all to tap into like our own inner essences, do our healing work. So instead of showing up in the wounded way because of all the social conditioning and our personal trauma that we've gone through, if we can do that inner healing work and show up as our whole healed selves, and that's an ongoing forever life process, by the way. But the more that we can show up as our whole selves rather than just these external facades, the healthier we are, the healthier our families are, our communities, our whole freaking world. So that's why I do this work. That's why I'm doing all these dating after divorce conversations. That's why I'm turning it into a dating after divorce program. That's why I have, the one-to-one coaching, all of it. Whew, this is quite the tangent I've just gone off on here, isn't it? But it's really, this is what I'm so passionate about, is just really helping us little by little, person by person, doing our healing work, showing up as our whole selves, men, women, any gender identity, and learning to do things differently, because I think that we are in a place in our society where we get to do this stuff now. A lot of this kind of work wasn't available to previous generations. Every generation faces their own, new set of healing and evolution. Obviously, we're like well past the industrial age and we've gone through various stages like that. And now we're at this whole actually, let's look at humans and as individuals and let's try and get back to, healing and being our whole selves. And I think that's the stage we're at. And it's really exciting to be part of it and to be part of this healing in relationship. Whew. Okay, let me just pause there and take a drink. So I think in terms of these dating after divorce conversations I've been having then, and it's also showed me, they've been beautiful, these conversations, and it's really showed me how much of an appetite there is for this sort of stuff. And because, like I said, I'm having men and women open up to me about this and really hearing about how, although I am getting so many people are saying to me oh, but my situation's unique, or this is just specific to me, which is true. Everybody has their own specific individual stories. And also, there are way more commonalities than there are differences. Our human experiences, the feelings that you are feeling are almost never unique to you. The external circumstances will be, but the feelings inside are actually pretty darn universal. And people want to open up and share. They want spaces that they can bring their whole selves. They want spaces where they can the stories. And I've had so many people who come on these calls and that are oh my gosh, I've just talked at you the whole time. I'm so sorry. Is that okay? Yes, absolutely okay. Like, even the people who are like, oh, I came on here and didn't think I was going to have anything to say. I didn't know what I was going to tell you. Um, like, yeah, I've never done this before. No, of course not. That's okay. But people find themselves like having so much to say and so much. It's also been really cool to watch how much happens like in real time. Like one of the calls I just got off of, like watching him say the things, but also all the stuff that was going unsaid because he was working through it like in real time. And it's just an awesome process to watch and to be a part of. And I mean, little plug here of like, that's also the point of coaching. Like these calls I'm getting on are not coaching calls. They are very much like, you tell me your stories. I might ask some questions about the dating stuff. I might ask a few questions, but mostly it's like just you telling me your stories. And I'm not coaching on the things, but it's also like, that is a lot of what coaching is, as well as giving you a space to dump out your stuff and to look at it. And then the difference is that in a coaching call, whereas on these calls, I'm actually having to try really hard to like pull myself back in and not do coaching. But on coaching calls, it's like you dump out the bag and it's like, all right, now together we'll like sort through the things and we'll be like, oh, what is this thing and what does that mean? Or do I want to keep that or not keep that? And we can do that sort of stuff together. And it's cool to be a part of that process and to be like, here's my stuff. What are we going to do with it? Whereas, yeah, on these dating after divorce calls, it's like, here's my story, and then I'll put it all back in the bag and carry on. I don't know where I was going with that either. If you guys are still listening to this, thanks for sticking with me today. Clearly, I think it's because I've been on, 4 calls in a row this morning, and just been listening. And so now I'm like, let me just out at you. Hope you enjoy it. Actually, though, I am going to move on to the Q&A part because you've heard me just chatter on long enough, and I've got some good questions. So, as always, though, let's see if I can answer them in the short space of time. I set myself a high challenge here when I'm like, ask me all your coaching questions. And instead of having like an hour to coach on it together, I'm like, let me try and pack it into like a 10-minute non-specific answer. It's a challenge for my coaching skills. So the first question I absolutely loved was about alcohol. And the question was that, so this woman who sent me the question said that she doesn't drink loads, but she sometimes goes through periods of not drinking at all, sometimes drinks a little bit, and then sometimes, like she was away on holiday last week and with friends and drank a bunch more. Came home afterwards and realized that actually, like, I feel like crap after having that much alcohol and wanting to step away from drinking alcohol altogether. So she was asking for sort of like tips on being able to cut out alcohol from her life. And I think if you don't know me very well, but actually it's not something I talk about a lot on here anyway. So I do drink alcohol, but not loads. I know some people have sort of had the impression that I'm teetotal, and I'm not. But also I really recognize the impact that alcohol has on me, and I really, I don't drink very much. And so my sort of tips on it, if you will, are really, it's that noticing the impact it has on you. So I've never drank loads and loads anyway, but I stopped drinking. So this is all, it was actually at the time of my separation when I first split up. So January 2020, I had a newborn and a toddler. My marriage was falling apart. My ex-husband moved out. I signed up for a 30 Days to Healthy Living program, and part of that 30 Days to Healthy Living was cutting out crap, including alcohol. After that, I did that because I knew that, I knew I was at risk of postnatal depression and depression in general. I knew I had all these big factors going on, and that actually I needed to give myself the best advantage I possibly could to not make things worse. There was no way, I needed to do as much good for my body and my brain as I could at this time period. So was happy to cut out the booze and do this 30 Days to Healthy Living program. I then kept it up, and, obviously I had newborn was breastfeeding. Well, not obviously, not everybody breastfeeds. I was breastfeeding. So I wasn't drinking loads, but you can also breastfeed while you can drink while breastfeeding. I did that with my first. Sorry, I'm getting my tongue all twisted up here. The point that I was trying to make is that I cut out alcohol several years ago, like pretty much completely for my own like health and mental health reasons at that time. And it was when I cut it out pretty much completely that when I started introducing it back in, I noticed the difference. So at that point, it was more of like a theoretical cutting it out for my benefits. The information on the internet tells me alcohol is bad for my mental health, so I'm going to cut it out. But I hadn't noticed it personally. It was just like, oh, the research says it doesn't help, so let's like cut out anything like that. When I started introducing it back in, I really noticed the difference it made to my mental health. So even a glass or two would be enough that I would get, I lose patience with my kids the next day. I'm far less patient. It sends my anxiety up several notches. So things where like, if I'm anxious about something or overthinking something, if I drink the next day, I'm overthinking even more. I still I have some anxious attachment style in relationships, which I don't love. It's something I come back to over and over with my own coach. But so if I drink, my anxious attachment kicks in more and I'm like, ooh, I feel like I need to grab hold of you and bring you in close. And it's nothing to do with my relationship. It's to do with me. So I noticed all of those changes that I hadn't noticed when I was drinking on a more regular basis. And so noticing those things for me is a huge part of then not drinking. So I now, whereas before, because I drank regularly enough and I wasn't tuned into myself in that kind of way at all. So even if I wasn't drinking much, I just wasn't self-aware enough to notice all those things. Whereas really doing all this inner work and getting aware of what is my normal level of being and what changes when I have alcohol, and I could really start to see these changes. And it's putting together those pieces. And I've done this with some clients too, where it's okay, on the days where you're particularly worked up, let's just notice, were you drinking last night? I'm not saying it's the direct cause all the time, but was that a factor? Have you been drinking alcohol lately? And a lot of the time people are like, oh yeah, I actually can see the link there. So getting clear and mindful for yourself of what the link is. And then using that as your own reminder. So when for me, because I've noticed these things, and like I said, I'm not teetotal, but I only drink alcohol now if it's going to be worth it. I don't just sit around and have a glass of wine on my own at home, because I know that the next day I'm going to have to fight off some of those little extra anxious demons that wouldn't normally be there. And I'm do I want to deal with those? No. Sometimes I do. Sometimes the answer is, yeah, I've got this big night out planned with my girlfriends. We're going to go out and I want some gin and I want to go dancing and also you can go dancing without the gin. But sometimes I'm no, I want this big night out. I want the drinks. And I know tomorrow I'm going to have to deal with those extra things, and that's okay. And particularly because now I know about those things, I also know, so when I'm in the next day and I'm oh, my anxious thoughts are going, or things just seem crap today, or I'm less patient, or whatever it is, I don't have to beat myself up for it either. And I don't have to be oh, this, isn't it the end of the world? I can go, hang on, this is the effects of the alcohol. I know if I ride this out till tomorrow, things are going to seem better again. So it helps me make those decisions. I'm not sure if this is answering your question at all. But then, so I think the point of that was, to notice those things in yourself, to use that as your own motivation of is this trade-off going to be worth it? And then I also think it comes down to, so there is a lot of social pressure, whether spoken or unspoken, social pressure to drink, and really trusting in yourself that it's nobody else's fucking business whether you drink alcohol or not. It really isn't. And most of the time, people actually don't care. So yes, it comes up more often. Some of it is spoken pressure of come on, just have one drink. You can have one. Why not? and to be like, well, because I don't want one. Or you don't have to explain yourself, or you can explain yourself if you want to. But in my circumstances, at least in my experience, it was very rare that anybody else put pressure on me to drink. It was much more of like, it felt like situational pressure, or just a general expectation of like, I'd go out to dinner with, a bunch of girlfriends, and they would all order a glass of wine, and I would feel like I'm going to be the weird one out if I don't. Nobody else said, Lindsey, why, you have to have wine. It was purely an inside me thing. And it really comes down to trusting myself that like, they actually don't give a shit if I'm drinking or not. And like really feeling like, trusting myself that like, they're still going to be my friends, even if I'm not drinking booze. And if they're not my friends because I'm not drinking booze, then maybe they're not my friends in the first place. But really, it was just a lot of conversations with myself of like, this isn't the deciding factor, or this doesn't matter, or like, you can just go and have fun and not drink. And it just takes a lot of intention, I think. Bought some M&S alcohol fizz. I'm thinking you mean alcohol-free fizz. Looking forward to it. And yeah, stuff like that too. So I like no secco. I buy no secco a lot, which is alcohol-free Prosecco, for my celebration vibes, because there is something like exciting and celebratory about the bubbles and the fizz. And I'll put like my like virgin mojito, what's the word I'm looking for? Like squash. No. Gosh, I am totally having a mind freeze here. I've got some nice non-alcoholic drinks that I will put in to like fancy glasses and make them look like a cocktail. They're not, but it still gives me that celebratory vibe. And so really just pulling in you can get a lot of the same buzz that you get from alcohol, but without the alcohol. And just really treating it with a lot of intention, I guess, is the point behind all of this, is being intentional about it, being intentional with your choices, being intentional with your self-talk, being intentional with your self-trust, and knowing that like there's a lot of social conditioning around alcohol in our cultures, particularly like here in England and in the US and in many other of our Western cultures. And it just doesn't need to be there. You can buck against that trend, in a lot of ways. Like, we're doing all this other work that goes against the norms in terms of all this inner work. It can be the same with alcohol. Like, you don't have to follow everybody else. You get to do it your way. And doesn't that feel awesome? So that was the first question. Oh, goodness. I really need to talk faster or less. Okay, that's going to be really hard, though, because this second question is even harder to answer in a short period of time. So I will say that this might be one to take away offline. But the question was, what do you do when the other person in the relationship doesn't want sex? And this question came from a man, and was then like, what's your advice when your wife doesn't want to have sex? And like almost ever. I think that this feels really scary for me to say, actually, this bluntly. Because I feel like you're all going to run away and hate me. But I think my answer to that is that when somebody in a relationship really doesn't want to have sex, and it's like an ongoing, I'm not talking about like tonight or, like one night or two nights, because we don't have to have sex all the time. But when this is like an ongoing long-term thing in a relationship, it usually means that there is some inner healing to do individually and in relationship. Not wanting to have sex with your partner for a long period of time probably means that there is some serious stuff that needs to be worked on. And like I said, that feels scary for me to say, but that is what I believe. And it could be individually, it could be with your relationship, it could be both. But sexual expression is very much a part of us as humans. It is one of our core emotions. Is we've got, see if I can get these right: anger, sadness, happiness, fear, and sexual expression / creativity go hand in hand. So those are like the 5 core emotions. And if the sexual expression is missing as one of the core emotions, it's usually because it's been tamped down in a lot of ways. And that could be, we are full of social conditioning telling us all kinds of stuff about it. We are full of all kinds of our own personal drama and personal trauma. And then when you throw in relationship stuff as well as individual stuff, like there's a lot there. And this is really very common. This is what was the case in my marriage. Was I did not want sex for a long time in our marriage. This still frustrates me slightly, but like we went to see a relate counselor to do sex therapy, and the relate counselor went to like physical exercises to try, like went to address the sex stuff as the primary cause, when really it was the relationship was the underlying issue, and the fact that I didn't want to have sex was a symptom of the problems in our marriage. And neither one of us acknowledged that. This particular counselor didn't acknowledge that. It was straight to the sex stuff. But you guys may have heard me talk about this before, but my mentor and coach, Chelsea Page, always talks about the intimacy pyramid. So think about a pyramid. The bottom foundational level is intimacy with yourself. The next level is emotional intimacy with somebody else, then physical intimacy with somebody else, and then sexual intimacy. And you need that foundation, like pyramids rely on the foundations below it. So sexual intimacy being the top. If that's not there, it's probably because there's something that's cracked or not strong with your physical intimacy, or with your emotional intimacy, or with your intimacy with yourself, or all the way down the pyramid. So I feel, and that's like I was scared to say this because I think you're all going to hate me and run away. And it can be really hard to hear, and it's certainly not something that I wanted to hear. And it took divorce in my case before I really was able to look into that and looking back and go, oh shit, now I see it. But that not wanting to have intimate relations means that there is intimacy crumbling somewhere else, and those are the places to start. Fixing the sexual intimacy on its own, or like addressing the sexual intimacy, really isn't the place to start. It's do you have the physical intimacy? Beyond that, do you have the emotional intimacy? And below that, have you got the intimacy with yourself? Those are the places to start. And, doing this, it can be hard to do while you are in relationship with somebody else. Like, I feel like in some ways I had the benefit of doing it on my own. My marriage ended, and I mean, that sounds really crazy, doesn't it? But my marriage ended, and then it was me as an individual who really, I went down to that foundational level of intimacy with self, and like really spent a long time digging into my own shit for the first time in my life. And then I go into the dating world, and it's like, all right, now I'm going to do intimacy with somebody else, and then I'm going to do physical intimacy with them, and then sexual intimacy with them. And it sort of gave me the space and freedom to do it that way. But that is absolutely not the only way. You can do these pieces in relationship with somebody else, and the sooner you start doing them, the better. So it's not easy. It can be really scary. There can be a big fear about like, what if we start doing these intimacy pieces and I discover that the relationship is broken? Like, that's why it's a huge part of why I wouldn't even look at any of that stuff, was because there was no way that I was going to admit that our relationship was broken. But head in the sand just doesn't work. It's not sustainable. By pretending there's nothing wrong with your relationship, it doesn't actually mean there's nothing wrong with your relationship. It just means the problems go on for longer and longer and longer. And so many of the people I have talked to about their divorce in these last few weeks have said over and over about how like their marriage went on for longer than, in hindsight, it had been broken for years, and they dragged it out for much longer and weren't willing to do anything about it. Or they were trying to do something about it, but like the other party wasn't, or they just weren't connecting on what they were trying to do. But ultimately, it's not sustainable. So the sooner you can start to dig into these pieces and do, but the thing is, you can't force anybody else to do this work. So going back to the person who asked this question and was like, my partner doesn't want sex, and you can do your stuff, which is, it always starts with you. You cannot force anybody else to do anything, but you certainly can't force anybody else to do their own inner work. But you can do your own work. You can open up the dialogue with them in new ways, and really, doing what you can to rebuild intimacy. And that's where people like intimacy coaches come in. People, there are lots of ways to work on your intimacy with yourself, with your partner, and see if seeing if a relationship can survive it. Absolutely, they can. And you can do this work and it can survive. You can do this work and decide that the marriage has run its course. There's a whole bunch of different outcomes, but basically, the longer you put it off, the harder it gets. Like, there's the best time to start doing intimacy work is like yesterday. Like, do it now. So this was a really long one today. I hope that was helpful. If you've stuck with me all the way to the end of this, well done, you guys. I feel like I actually don't know how long this was, but I feel like it was a long one. I hope it was helpful. If any of this brings stuff up for you, if you want to talk about any of this in more detail, absolutely send me a message, leave a comment, send me an email, send me a message, get in touch, send me a carrier pigeon for all I care. But let's keep the conversation going. If it triggered something in you and you're like, oh, I hated that. That was awful. I want to hear about that too. Don't troll me. I don't want you to troll me. But if it was like, if you actually have something that like you want to tell me like, oh, and we can open up conversation, great, let's do that. If you want to talk about coaching together, we can do that too. I am going to be, what am I saying here? So yeah, I'm doing the dating after divorce calls for at least a few more days, possibly in like I said, I don't know how long it's going to be going for, but if you want to have a dating after divorce call where it's totally, these are free. Like I said, it's not me coaching you. It's you coming on to tell me your stories. Let me know. We can get that booked in. Send me a message if you want to talk about coaching options. Check out my website, lindseyhallcoaches.com. You can check out my Instagram at lindseyhallcoaches. On my website at lindseyhallcoaches.com, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can join my email list. Please join my email list. I live in constant fear that Instagram's going to take down my Instagram profile because I talk about risque stuff like sex and blowjobs. And social media doesn't like that. So if my Instagram were to get totally deleted and my Facebook was wiped out and all that, if you still want to be able to keep in touch with me, join my email list. That's where you get the stuff. So do that. Go to my website, lindseyhallcoaches.com, scroll to the bottom, put in your email address. Then you can have me, even if the social media giants take me away. Okay, that's it. I think I've got nothing left to say for this week. I will be back here next week. If you've got questions, send me your questions for next week. And we'll keep chatting. Okay, I love you. Bye.